is another special broadcast as we come to you live from our auditorium on our ground floor. It is round 3 of the SAfm University Debate Challenge. Round 1, you would remember, was between the University of the Witwatersrand as well as University of Johannesburg. That debate was won by the University of Johannesburg. University of Johannesburg in round 2 went up against the University of Pretoria, which that round was our last round. It was won by University of Pretoria, who will be back in today's debate. University of Pretoria will be going up against Northwest University. The speakers for the University of Pretoria, Simon Augustine is with us and Mamkabelo Mthembu is with us. The opposition speakers, that's the Northwest University, the team is made up by Orefile Babele as well as Jeremiah Mukwena. That debate will start shortly. Just again, to tell you what the debate topic is, what the rules are, and how the debate works. It is a 2-on-2 university debate challenge where there's an opposition side and a proposition side. The topic for this debate, which each team will have collectively 13 minutes to build a case around, 5 minutes from the proposition speaker, 5 minutes from the opposition speaker, and then 5 minutes from the second proposition speaker and 5 minutes from the second opposition speaker. The debate will then be closed off by the reply speeches, where there will be a 3-minute reply speech from the opposition team and a closing off speech, which is also a 3-minute reply speech from the proposition team. You can be a part of the debate. Just send us a WhatsApp voice note on 0614-104-107. If you want to watch the debate live, we're streaming to you this live on all our digital platforms, YouTube, Twitter, as well as Facebook. But of course, you can listen to this on www.safm.co.za. Otherwise, the frequency is 104 to 107 FM nationwide. But do search SAfm Radio on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as our YouTube account, and you can watch a live stream of this debate. The topic for this debate, and it's another controversial one: should citizens get to vote for Constitutional Court justices? Should citizens get to vote for our Constitutional Court justices? Like I already said, this debate will be started off by the proposition team, University of Pretoria, and the opposition team is University of the Northwest. Let's take a quick break. On the other side of this, we will begin the debate. Okay, welcome back from the break, and thank you so much for still being with us. My name is Oliver Dixon. This is This Week Today, and it is the start of round 3 of the SAfm University Debate Challenge. To open up our debate, let's welcome Simon Augustine, who's the first proposition speaker from the University of Pretoria.
Greetings to the House at large. Once again, my name is Simon Augustine, first speaker on behalf of the House for the Proposition, and I'm joined today by my co-speaker, Mamkabelo Mthembu. The arguments which we will be putting forward today, firstly, will seek to contextualize this issue, and secondly, address why there are the changes that need to happen within South Africa, following with which my co-speaker, Mamkabelo Mthembu, will speak to how we best achieve democracy under our solution under this motion today. In dealing firstly with the contextual matters, we ought to establish how Constitutional Court justices are selected right now. As per Section 178 of the Constitution, the manner in which it works now is that the JSC, that being the Judicial Services Commission, puts forward a list of nominees to the President. The President then reviews that list and selects from that list of nominees the justice that will replace the vacant seat that currently is present on the Constitutional Court at the time. The reason why that needs to change is twofold. The first argument is one of power versus competence, and the second one of politics. If we look firstly to the first argument of power versus competence, if we look merely at the three past presidents that we've had, the three last presidents, being Cyril Ramaphosa, Jacob Zuma, and Thabo Mbeki, none of these individuals could be said to be competent with respect to expert knowledge necessary to select a court justice. But it's also our position that such competence is not necessary for such a selection, merely that the fact that they are incompetent to make the decision and yet given the power to do so as a sole entity is not sufficient for this nation and does not achieve the aims of our Constitution. Cyril Ramaphosa does hold an LLB degree, but so do 1,000 graduates every single year in South Africa. President Jacob Zuma had no formal schooling with respect to law whatsoever. And Thabo Mbeki was an economist. We're not saying that people like this can't make decisions as to whether or not a constitutional court justice is elected, but merely that more individuals ought to be making the decision if they are not experts. We understand that the pool of nominees that is presented is one of experts, but if we're going to trust one individual, one sole actor, even if they are the president, to make this decision, it opens them up to potential for corruption and for temptation to make decisions that serve their own political ideals, and instead we should then elect for the entire nation to vote by referendum as to who is actually put in that position. And that takes us to the second argument, that being of politics. Now, one might argue that the law ought to be separate from politics. But let's be honest, in the House today, that is not the truth in South Africa. The law is not entirely separate, especially in matters like this. And this argument can be made by analogy. Let us presume that the president is meant to be held accountable by the Constitutional Court, which he then selects members to be a part of. And let us say that the president is before that court for a disciplinary matter at the time of electing the 11th member that sits on that justice. If there are 5 members and it's a split bench on either side of the matter, the president then has the sole discretion in electing the individual who will sit the vacant seat and decide his or her fate. That is not a power that the president should have. And that argument extends to things like bills and other constitutional matters that concern our human rights. As a nation, if we are going to be protecting our human rights and voting for those human rights, it should not merely extend to selecting a political party nor a president, but also to the Constitutional Court justices that decide in a court of law how those rights are interpreted in courts of law, as that is where the impact is actually felt. Furthermore, the law should also then be enforced through our policy, and our policy is quite simple. Firstly, the JSC will still select a short list of individuals from which we will elect the court justice. However, we would not allow court justices to campaign per se. Instead, we would set up a varying amount of interviews across the nation on various accounts that will allow these individuals to represent themselves in what they stand for in their past cases where they are interviewed by experts, and the people can then make a decision with respect to how they feel about those candidates and vote for them. The people then vote, and the most popular candidate takes the place of the vacant seat. This does not raise any issues with respect to efficacy because, as we've already established, it's already a group of experts that are being shortlisted. We merely want to remove personal gain, corruption, and temptation to make decisions that would benefit the president as a sole entity as well as those in government by allowing all people to make this decision. And upon that basis, I have never been more proud to propose.
Thank you very much to the proposition first speaker. We now welcome the opposition first speaker.
Good evening, panel. My name is Urifili Babele, and I am the opposition speaker for this debate, right? So, starting with this debate, we had a point from side proposition, which says that it's a case of power versus competence, right? And when we're talking about this, we're actually speaking about the competence that the actual people in charge have, right? And so, to mitigate for the fact that someone who's incompetent is put in charge, suggestion based on side proposition is to put more incompetent people, which are general members of the public, that do not possess merely the characteristics of which is necessary and are not under the advice of other people, such as your JSC and such as your members of parliament, and such as other forms of means to ensure that the president makes the best informed decision. No, we're not going to take that decision. Instead, we're going to leave this up to the people that actually have no idea about the judicial system. And we're going to show you how this happens, right? We're going to show you in multiple ways why this is a bad idea and how this would not work in any practical sense, right? So first of all, I would like to talk about how, in this manner, the president electing someone to put in the seat would rather work in their behalf. Well, not precisely, because when we're looking at the Constitutional Court and its setup, it's mainly drawn up to facilitate for constitutional matters. That means there's a metric put in place that which judges should operate on. That cancels out that point entirely. So let's talk about why the Constitutional Court is important. So we tell you that it is important because it has to hold the basic tenets of our Constitution and our democracy. So when we look at that, we tell you that, and amongst the steps, amongst side proposition told you about in which they're appointed, he failed to mention one other step, and that is the JSC acts as an advisory panel for the president. So they actually inform the president on the nominees that are there, right? And the JSC performs checks and interviews and draws up a list of candidates to which the president then consults with, right? So when we're looking at this, again, if we're looking at a case of representation or transparency, the interviews are public. By virtue of the interviews being public, members of the public and the general population are aware to see what is actually happening. So if you're talking about getting more voices out, if you're talking about that's already happening. Second point, this process is undertaken by legal experts, right? So why is this important within this debate? Well, we believe that legal experts are in a much better position to know the Constitutional Court matters in general, of the complexities that are handled within this court, and that are questions to ask with regards to judges, with regards to the ideologies, what they do, how they would handle specific cases that no ordinary person would know. I would sit through an interview and still not know how a judge should have handled a particular case because I only look at the end result, which is the sentencing, as a citizen. So that's an important factor within this debate. Thirdly, we tell you that there's already representation by means of voting, right? We tell you that the National Assembly is involved in the process of choosing this. So how does this happen? Well, before the president chooses, well, he consults the National Assembly and gets their views. Those are people voted by the people. So by virtue of that, we're essentially telling you that the people are involved in this process, right? And if you're looking for a democratic process, there's a representative democratic process because we do not choose certain measures. We have people that do that for us by virtue of it being a democratic representative system, right? So we also talked about accountability, and this was the main idea, that people will not be accountable to this, right? And we tell you that the JSC is additionally, whilst providing interviews and checks, also acts as a means of holding accountability for judges' incompetence because they investigate claims that are brought against them. So we tell you that even in the point where, upon your premise of the world, a president or rather a justice works on behalf of politics, rather, the JSC would be subject to that information and would investigate that claim. All right, so that cancels it out immediately. So why would allowing citizens to vote be a bad idea? Well, firstly, I'm going to lead with the fact that there are countries that have done this, and we know this in reality, right? So we don't have to operate in this framework, in this imaginary world, when we actually have a country that did this. So Bolivia, through the amendments of the 2009 Constitution, did this, in which they allowed people to vote for national elections for the Constitution, right? For the Constitutional Court, excuse me. So what they found out when doing this is that, number one, if your country is in a virtually do not go to polls, if you have a generally politically incompetent or country, not politically incompetent rather, but rather a country that is that is not politically active, right? They don't go to the polls. That's what happens even when you vote for justices, because it doesn't change the mere fact that you're voting for a justice. What it actually does is that it doesn't show that people should go to the polls. So we're telling you that this is important. We're telling you that the average South African is not competent or is not socially and politically active, aware to know of these issues, right? And finally, we tell you that even in the need to campaign, in the case of Bolivia, judges did not need to campaign, right? And in that idea, in that world where we're trying to stop that, what ended up happening is that people did not know enough information about them, because we are not facilitating that process. Because if you're talking about a metric which already exists, we tell you that amongst given the best experts, given people who actually know the idea and the responsibility to do this is the best idea. And for that, I've never been more proud to oppose.
Surely you guys can give a bigger round of applause. That is the opposition second speaker. Remember, you can be a part of this debate. Send us through your WhatsApp voice notes reflecting on this debate. Whether you have a question or a comment, you can be a part of it. Send through those WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. Or alternatively, give us a call on 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. But send us those WhatsApp voice notes as well on 0614 104 107. Let's take a quick break. On the other side of this, we continue the debate with the proposition second speaker.
SAfm has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
Welcome back to
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear on SAfm.
One of the questions that was raised a bit earlier on by one of our listeners is that why do we need money to fight gender-based violence?
How are you going to make sure that there is proper policing without money? How are you going to make sure that there is proper programs at community level, whether they are parenting programs, whether there are issues of mental health, or whether there are programs that deal with conflict resolution at community level? Where are you going to get the money that basically says street lighting must be proper? Where are you going to get money that basically addresses so many other issues that contribute towards gender-based violence?
Lebo Ramofoko, who is Executive Director at Oxfam South Africa and also a gender activist.
Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. This week, today on SAfm.
Welcome back to This Week Today. My name is Oliver Dixon. If you're just joining us, you're listening to the third round of the SAfm University Debate Challenge. This is between the University of Pretoria, our last round's winner, who is on proposition side against Northwest University on opposition side. Again, you can be a part of the debate, and the topic is, should citizens get to vote for Constitutional Court justices? Should citizens get to vote for Constitutional Court justices? University of Pretoria on the proposition side say yes. Northwest University on the opposition side say no. Be a part of the debate. Send us those WhatsApp voice notes on 0614-104-107. Or you can give us a call. 086 000 2032 086 000 2032. And to continue the debate right now, we welcome to the podium the proposition second speaker.
I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, a true democracy recognizes that a people's right to vote in matters that significantly affect their political, social, and economical freedoms. This right should not only extend to us voting for members of parliament, but should also extend to us voting for the justices of the Constitutional Court, as they are the highest body making power in terms of law, and they set the precedent of this country. But before I move on to what I will be doing as second speaker, focusing on how we best achieve democracy in this debate, I will be dealing with a brief rebuttal. Firstly, we're going to be talking about a comparative here. So we have a side opposition that says that they best achieve merit and they best achieve democracy when we have the JSC and the president vote for constitutional justices. Whereas we on our side say that the decision should involve the people, the JSC, and the president. So firstly, let us show you how they do not win merit on their side, how they do not win principle, and they also do not achieve the aims of democracy. Firstly then, they talk about how the JSC is basically filled with legal experts. Exactly that, right? Meaning that their entire point that people voting for the constitutional justices is going to lead to us having constitutional court justices that are basically not qualified enough is a matter that is mitigated. Because what we're doing doing in our policy is that we have the JSC nominate the people, but then nominate the Constitutional Court justices, and then we have citizens voting from a pool of qualified people. Now, let us also then look as to why they support the status quo. They believe that the status quo best achieves merit. Flawed, right? Because we tell you that the president in itself, even though it is advised by the JSC, does not only always necessarily have the legal expertise to choose who can be a Constitutional Court justice. I'll give you an example, right? When Zuma specifically wanted to actually extend the term of Justice Ngobo because he felt that at that point, Justice Ngobo will best basically cater to what he actually needed, right? So his biases. And we also need to take into consideration at the point that Jacob Zuma wanted to basically extend Justice Ngobo's term, it was at a point where Jacob Zuma had to answer before the Constitutional Court. This is where Simon's case basically becomes evident, right? Where we try to eliminate this power because this power is something that not only is problematic for the democracy and the principles of democracy, but then we see that basically it can push forth narratives within the Constitutional Court that are harmful for a democracy. Secondly, then they talk about how within the JSC there's representation, right? So there are people voted by citizens who are sitting in the JSC, and that's enough representation. In my speech, I'll show you why that is not enough representation. I'll be talking about why it is fundamentally important for us to actually vote for Constitutional Court justices, as our right to vote should extend to this. Firstly, let's frame the Constitutional Court. Ladies and gentlemen, Parliament makes the law. The Constitutional Court has a final say on our law. They have framed the political, social, and economical freedoms of this country. I'll give you 3 examples. Let's look at the Fourie case. Without the Constitutional Court justices, ruling in the Fourie case, homosexual marriages would not be realized in this country. We see how these people basically have a lot of power in shaping the rights that are fundamental to us as citizens. Why should we not vote for them? It's not enough that we vote for Parliament, because we understand that Parliament is not the only law-making body in this country, but the Constitutional Court justice is also. So if you basically, as an opposition, agree that we should vote for Parliament that basically represents people in the law-making body, you should also then agree in voting for the Constitutional Court justices that basically shape our rights even higher than what Parliament does. Another example, we look at the Pillay case and how the Constitutional Court basically established the principle that schools need to be decolonized, right? Where a Hindu student was not allowed to wear an earring because of a religion in school, the Constitutional Court was like, that's basically unconstitutional. Schools are now being decolonized because of the precedence that is actually being set by the Constitutional Court. What is the conclusion here? The Constitutional Court and its justices play a fundamental role in our social, economical, and political freedoms. Why should we not have the right to vote for them? On principle, we win this debate, right? Because if you believe that a democracy, basically, or the fundamental principle of a democracy, is to exercise the right to vote, right? In order for us to elect people who fundamentally change our lives, you have to support this motion. We also do so in a manner that does not compromise merit. I've never been proud to propose.
Thank you very much to the proposition second speaker. Again, you can be a part of this debate. Send us those WhatsApp voice notes on 0614-104-107. Which side do you think is making the more convincing case? Or which side do you fall on? Give us a call, 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. Should citizens get to vote for Constitutional Court justices? This is round 3 of the SAfm University Debate Challenge. Without any further ado, let's welcome the second opposition speaker to make the opposition case.
I'll be starting my speech in 1, 2, 3. Panel, for the motion and the deliberation of today's discussion, we have a proposing side that actually substantiates the merit of their argument based on 3 pillars. 1, the people's right to vote. 2, the president's incompetence. Thirdly, on the merit of the fact that there is not adequate representation within the JSC. Now, I will show you why we actually win this debate and why this argument solely is not actually substantive enough for them to win this case. One is that, ladies and gentlemen, for us to actually have a democracy, you need to understand that our democracy actually thrives in two instances, where there's actually direct participation of the citizens in the act of voting, or an indirect representation. What does this actually mean? It means that the individuals, when they get to vote, the people in whom they actually allocate votes to represents them in spheres that the people could not actually be in, which actually means that when the people elect certain particular individuals, they actually impart the burden of representation upon those people. Why is this crucial within the margin of this debate? I will clarify to us why. And then within the substantive matter of my extension, I will actually touch upon why changing the status quo is actually a bad idea. Now, ladies and gentlemen, keep this at the back of your mind, that we do not necessarily merit ideas due to how they sound in theory, but we actually merit them based on how practical they sound. The first speaker from the opposition side actually told us on how this attempt of actually incorporating people within the appointment process of the judiciary, it was actually tried and it actually failed flawlessly. We're actually saying to you, ladies and gentlemen, that once we actually try to implement a radical approach like this, we're actually repeating history itself. But let me get into my substantive matters of rebutting the sub-pillars of what they bring. They say that the people have the right to vote. Yes, the people do have the right to vote. And the Constitution is actually upheld when representations of the National Council of Provinces and the National Assembly, which is also part and represented within the JSC, is actually there. And why is this important? It actually shows that the people who are elected, who carry the burden of representation, are there for the good of the people. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just a history lesson. Since the appointment of our first court of justices up until to the appointment of now, we've never actually had discrepancies in which we can actually say it demands a radical change that can actually say that we can actually encompass people into this. And also, within the flaws of their argument is that they tell us that the people actually have to vote based on the president's incompetence. But yet they still do not account to the argument that we are substantively making, that looking at the voting polls of the people when they say the people have the right to vote for parliament, which is true. But if you check the statistics closely, to a margin of the people actually go to the polls to vote. So we actually have a subsequent minority of the general public who are actually participating in politics itself. Now we are actually moving the people who are not necessarily participating in the election of the crucial body of governance, which is parliament, to actually vote for a judiciary, of which we have raised the point of saying that the average South African might not even know what's actually happening within the judiciary. This is why we have actually allocated the responsibility to be part of the JSC. Now, why is this important? We are actually saying that, one, they actually also predicate this of saying that their argument is actually sold upon the president's incompetence. But we actually clarified why the JSC is important. The advisory role means that when the nominees and the candidates actually interviewed and everything is done in a transparent manner that upholds the integrity of the Constitution, is that the president is given an advisory role based on the merit of how competent these individuals are and how these people have actually achieved merit to actually be upon the list of nominees. Now, why is this crucial for us to actually hold within the substantive matter of this argument? Is that, one, they did not even give us a metric of how the people's votes will actually sway the president to decide, because ultimately the president still needs to make a decision. So are we saying that the votes will just be allocated and then they sway the president to make the decision? A decision in which we are saying that will be actually made by the minority that don't necessarily go to the polls. So are we now saying that the people who we just implicitly said that might not even know anything that happens upon the judiciary, who will actually vote after a certain vacancy is then filled or is opened within the court justices, are we actually saying these people are actually informed enough to actually make the radical decisions that are supposed to change the landscape of the country? We say that in the current status quo, it's actually effective, and actually we do not actually need to elongate the process of appointment by actually introducing other stakeholders within the margin of this, because one is that they could not actually prove or poke holes in the appointment process itself. They are simply basing their arguments based on corruption, and if necessarily corruption is what they are fighting for, they should actually radically fight for curbing out corruption and not necessarily.
Thank you very much to the opposition second speaker. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. What do you make of that? What did you make of that? 086 000 2032. We'll be taking your WhatsApp voice notes in a very short while as well. You can send those on 0614 104 107. If you've just joined us, you're listening to the SAfm University Debate Challenge, where the University of Pretoria is going up against against Northwest University. You can again be a part of this conversation, this debate. The topic for the debate is should citizens get to vote for our Constitutional Court justices? Should citizens get to vote for our Constitutional Court justices? Tweet us at SAfm Radio across all platforms. That's on Twitter, on Facebook, as well as on YouTube, where you can also watch the debate live. It is being streamed live right now on all our platforms. You can simply stream the debate as well on safm.co.za. You can tweet me at Oliver_speaking. Let's take a quick break. On the other side of this, we continue the debate.
Beyond the headline with Aldrin St-Pierre on SAfm.
If you do become president, do you think that Cyril Ramaphosa should stay on as the president of the country?
Let me put it this way. We are going to the conference, and that's what we need to deal with. Now, the question of the leadership of the position of the president, there's never been a decision taken before conference what happens. It only arises when people had issues to raise after it's a decision of that time that was discussed. But there's no one who's actually ever taken a decision before and that we're going to a conference. There's no policy that says if the ANC goes to a conference, if there's a change, you must remove the president. There's no such a position. And also, there's no position that says if you get a president, you must have 1 or 2 terms. We have said that if it's 2 terms, you can't go beyond the 2 terms.
Dr. Zweli Mkhize, presidential hopeful for the ANC as the party heads to the elective conference.
Beyond the headline with Aldrin St-Pierre. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. This week, today, Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m.
You are listening to This Week Today. My name is Oliver Dixon. Again, you can be a part of this debate. It is the round 3 challenge of the SAfm University Debate Challenge. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. You can also send us a WhatsApp voice note on 0614 104 107. You can send us those WhatsApp voice notes on the WhatsApp line. Tweet us at SAfm Radio across all platforms, as well as streaming the debate live. That is on YouTube, on Facebook, as well as on Twitter. Let's go to the lines on 086 000 2032. Silo in Mokopane, good morning. Evening, my apologies.
And now I put in the fight. Look, thanks for taking my call. I'm with Team A in this sense. These politicians who always appoint judiciary, they always have their what can I call it? Whatever. Let me just. They always try to protect themselves. Always when they appoint these guys, like I think the lady, Mr. Mike, very nicely to say. You remember when Jacob Zuma wanted to extend the novel contract?
Yeah.
It was because precisely he wanted to protect him for whatever reason that. So, and there's a number of examples that we can give. We do not have time.
Yeah.
But as citizens, I think we should be the one who is electing this, because those people who are interviewing judges to become that office, most of them are politicians. They know nothing about the law. So we citizens must start to, or this law needs to be changed, or whatever. Citizens must be the one who should appoint these guys. Even our electoral system must be changed so that it can favor us, because now it's only favoring politicians who always appointed their own people who are doing nothing but stealing from us. Olivia, let me stop here.
Silo, thank you so much for your call. Really, really do appreciate it. Keep those calls coming in on 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. We're taking a WhatsApp voice note on 0614 104 107. Let's take a quick break. On the other side of this, we continue the show.
Oliver Dixon on SAfm.
And we continue the debate by welcoming to the podium the opposition reply speaker.
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, what we have today is a mischaracterization of the key tenets of this discussion, right? So we have a proposition that claims to be all for democracy and putting power to the people, right? And in that view, it's placed as if opposition is against that. Well, rather, we say that the different forms of democracy, as we've underpinned, right? It's the sole reason why we vote for people to actually make decision on behalf of us, right? So in that metric, we don't choose or we don't vote for the next finance minister because we put that trust in the president to do that. And if we're talking about the competency of the president to do that, that will be something that we need to be rewritten constitutionally. So by virtue of holding the constitutional tenets accordingly, we're actually doing this. This is actually democracy taking place, right? So we're also told how the president again is incompetent, right? And they are not. And again, they have not come to the critical point of how does the average citizen that does not get information from the GSC, that does not get information from the National Assembly, and that does not get information from multiple other sources to make an informed decision, how are they in a better position to do so? And even if they are, right, even if they are in a better place to do so, we tell you that the general person is not in that position to do so, and that people don't go to polls for voting. Just in the last election, in the local election, we saw a 40%, more or less than half of the people that registered to vote actually went to the polls. So we say that that exactly transcends into what we vote for, because it does not matter what we're voting for, because people are aware, at least politically, of what is happening, but people aren't aware of what is happening in the judiciary, right? So we're going to tell you that in this discussion, what we have told you is that we're looking for a more competent approach to maintain the status quo, because as the previous speaker spoke about, she spoke about the various cases in which the Constitutional Court has done very well under status quo, under a position in which they were placed behind merit at interviews and through this process, right? So we're saying let's maintain that and let's not have a system where people can vote for the most popular candidate, right? By virtue of that, we're saying that the people that are in charge to know should be the ones to vote, and therefore that we're all for democracy, and that should not stand. So essentially what we're telling you today is that we win this debate because we actually give you a metric that works, that we know that people are looking through a metric of constitutional values, and that corruption will not take place as they are accountable to the Constitution and the GSC itself, right? We don't get that from from side proposition, because they seem to be in a world in which the people are more expert knowledge than the actual experts in this particular field. So in this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, we are telling you that if you're going to vote for side opposition, the side that shows you the various points in which the complexities of a constitution are necessary, and therefore the best placed people are suited for choosing the best placed candidates. And for that, I say I've never been more proud to oppose.
That is the opposition reply speaker closing off the opposition case. Can we give the opposition team a round of applause? And to close off the entire debate, the proposition reply speaker.
Greetings once more to the House at large. Opposition's case is simple. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Unfortunately, that argument only works when the subject matter isn't a rusty pipe on an oil rig that's going to explode and spill out into the ocean, corrupting it. And that ocean is the people of South Africa. And that ocean is the ocean that we seek to protect. There are three main clashes in this debate. Firstly, competence. Secondly, accountability. And thirdly, how we best achieve democracy. And I'm going to demonstrate in this reply speech why what we have told you today wins us this debate on those grounds. Firstly, allow me to answer your question. You have said that we never answered why the general population is going to be more competent or better at making the decision. Let me affirm that in my speech, I did say that they aren't more competent. But who is more likely to make a bad decision? An individual president who can be corrupted and who can make a mistake, or an entire population that will be undertaking the decision? And even if it's only 40%, that's a hell of a lot more people than just the president alone. Furthermore, in building on that argument, we turn to the point of accountability. The opposition would have you to believe that the president is very easily held accountable by the JSC and also by the Constitutional Court. But the question we would pose to the House at large is, how can a president be held accountable by a body that, one, he elects, and that, secondly, the JSC he may simply overrule under Section 178 of the Constitution? That's not something that they dealt with. Whilst he can be advised by the JSC, he can simply ignore them. He can simply decide to do whatever he wants. And my co-speaker made examples of instances where this has already been attempted by presidents like President Jacob Zuma with Judge Ngobo. And furthermore, just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it can't happen in the future. Examples like you brought from Bolivia can also be contrasted with examples of where the current system, status quo, doesn't work in places like the Supreme Court of the United States, in which when President Trump was president and Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, he elected Amy Coney Barrett to replace her. Many people at the time took issue with that because a conservative president was assigning a conservative judge to the Supreme Court, knowing that Roe v. Wade would come under their discretion once again. And lo and behold, only a year later, that matter was overruled and now affects thousands and millions of Americans all across America. What stops that same instance from occurring under status quo in South Africa, where constitutional matters are heard all the time? And finally, under the point of democracy, they seem to hamper on the fact that a minority of people go to the polls, and that somehow, because only 40% of people show up, we're not going to actually have representation or represent the masses. 40% of people showing up is still more than a lone man, and whilst a lone man might easily be corrupted and make a decision for personal gain or to escape culpability, an entire nation is not likely to do so and can be informed by the JSC through interviews like our policy suggests in the exact same way that the president can, which makes them just as, if not more, competent to make that decision. And upon that point, we rest.
Thank you very much to our opposition reply speaker closing of the debate. What did you make of that? Give us a call, 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. We're also taking your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. Just to remind you, by the way, while this is a debate between the University of Pretoria as well as the Northwest University, the views of the students expressed here do not necessarily reflect the views of the universities that they go to. That is an important disclaimer. So do give us that call at 086 000 2032. We're excited about this debate challenge. These are young students, our future thinkers, our present day thinkers, and our future leaders, the people who will grow into positions where they make decisions about the well-being of this country collectively. And so it's important that we do give them a platform to be able to make, to find an audience, to make their case, and to learn the critical skills of critical thinking as well as debating, which is an incredibly important skill that we need as a country, to be very honest. We often speak past each other. We often miss the point that we're all trying to raise, and we're not particularly well trained as a nation to debate complex issues. And this is why programs like these exist, so that we can forefront those who do the work of deeply thinking about things and debating these matters. Our judge for this debate is Neo Masweu. Neo is a former university debater, having represented the University of Johannesburg. Neo has had a elaborate and well celebrated debating career, and today works in a very important space in the tech entrepreneurial startup space in South Africa, making really important impacts in that particular space. Neo will have a few minutes to deliberate while we take your calls. So 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032, and your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. So let's go to your voice notes.
SAfm, KG here from Mafikeng. Well, firstly, for the people who say the presidency might not have competence to appoint the rightful candidate for the Constitutional Court, I think they misrepresent the facts in the sense that if the presidency is maybe corrupt and would want to protect himself, it basically means that president is not worthy to be a president. And if that's the case, the solution is to remove the president. So if the president is winning by the same process of voting, it means people have trust in him to be able to be the president. And so we cannot, therefore, expect him to be incompetent only on the aspect of judges. So that falls out, which means I'm going with the opposition. Secondly, if people say, well, the JSC is made up mostly of just politicians who interview the candidates, that's not entirely correct. Some of the commissioners there will be lawyers, will be actually people who know legal issues. Apart from the fact that even the chairperson himself will be otherwise the chief justice or the deputy chief justice. So those people are at least better enlightened compared to the generality of the populace, of the population, to know which person is the best candidate. So in that respect also, I don't see that the election of the candidates to the Constitutional Court by the public would make it any better. It's only by popularity, like somebody said. So really, I go with the opposition. The proponents have no case.
Oliver, simple and straightforward. How can we trust the very same citizens who vote in corrupt leaders and don't care to vote them out? How can we trust them to meddle in our judiciary? Mahal from KZN.
Hi, yes.
Hi, Oliver, thank you. It's really here in Kuma. Yes, I go for the party that says the people must be given the opportunity to choose for the people, for the person they want. Yes, thank you.
Oliver Dixon on SAfm.
Let's go to your lines. Z out in Cape Town. Z, are you with us? Seems we have lost Z. Let's go to Joseph in Soweto. Joseph, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Go ahead. What's on your mind?
My mind is that, what is in my mind is that we have a constitution that is not followed by our leaders. And we have an education that is quality from general and further education and training quality assurance council, which is established by the Section 4 of Act 58 of operating as Umedusi. And it is not performed in our South African schools. And it is the only education that have social and human qualities.
Mm.
And it has economic and management sciences.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to hold you there, Joseph. But thank you so much for your call. Really appreciate it. Mark in Johannesburg. Good evening.
Good evening. It's good to chat to you. Can I just switch it? I think that'll be a bit better. I just give comments regarding single candidate versus president. I don't believe any one of those will work correctly. They work on the same model where you have 51% of the people voting for one party or one candidate, and the other 49 suffering while that person or party is in power. I believe it's extremely flawed in all levels. I've got a different approach, and I just wanted to know if you wanted to give me 2 seconds just to explain it.
Very briefly. Very briefly.
Okay. I first started off with a 5-party system, and it didn't work. No matter which way I looked at it, it was flawed. Then I went to 7, 9, and I ended up with 13. The reason why 13 is the magic number is, let's hypothetically say that take the demographics of South Africa, where the person that gives the most votes gets 3 candidates, 3 presidents. The next 3 parties each get a president each. Then you have to look at the lowest. You have to have like a breakthrough number. Let's call it 150,000. If you get 150,000, you get, and you're the bottom of the log. Those three at the bottom also get a president. So the people at the bottom also get to hear it. But there's a problem there. You don't get international, you don't get African buy-in. So every 4 years, a new African country will get nominated to present a candidate as a president. And also outside that of Africa, they also. So once you get a group of people making a policy, making a decision based on everybody in the country, it's far better than that of a single candidate or a multi-party system.
Okay.
Where we got only the ANC or a single candidate.
Mark, thank you so much for your call. Appreciate it, sir. And that brings us to the end of the engagement. I'm going to hand over to Neo Masweu, who is our judge for this debate. And Neo, you have exactly a minute to give us your verdict and explain it.
All right. So thank you so much for that really interesting debate. I think it was absolutely thrilling. I'll just give us an overview of the 3 points that were discussed and why we finally got to the decision of awarding the debate to the team. So ultimately, I think it's a conversation around whether devolution of power is actually not only sustainable, but it's actually ethically as well as jurisprudentially justifiable in the context of South Africa. And I think as we heard through the caller as well, and not necessarily in saying that they've influenced my decision, but to say that the important concession to actually question is whether South Africans as a citizenry actually have the political sophistication and in some ways the muster to actually bear the responsibility of voting for the judiciary when parliamentary procedures are already something that we're struggling with. But secondly as well, how do we ensure that the devolution of power is something that is enshrined in a specific way that allows South African citizenship as an act to become something that transcends just beyond the idea of government itself, but it becomes the idea in which we can act and work. I would, however, say that there were 2 problematic points. The first one I think we would say in opposition is that I would have loved to hear a lot more about the practicalities in which it would have worked itself. The imagination and theory, I think, was definitely there. And with regards to proposition, I think the most important concession to make was actually recognizing that there is in many ways a lack of devolution of power all the way from national government all the way down to the ordinary citizen. Having said that, we're more convinced that side opposition won this debate, specifically due to the fact that there is not necessarily a conceivable idea at the moment upon which we can make the concession that South African citizens, vis-a-vis the debate itself, can actually create a more participatory democracy based on the legal justice system itself. We would have loved to see a lot more.
You said this so in passing. Okay, take a break and say the winner is.
All right, so we're going to do a drum roll, and I hope this goes through to the radio as well. So the winner is side opposition, Northwest University.
Congratulations to the University of the Northwest, winning round 3 of the SAfm University Debate Challenge. That brings us to the end of the show. In the next round, which will be next year, I think February, the Northwest University will go up against our new challenger. That brings us to the end of the show. My name is Oliver Dixon. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you too much to the debaters, the listeners, as well as our judge. Good night.